Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. It is the interlull, the final interlull, by the way, of the 2024-25 season. Where does the fucking time go, folks? I know this season hasn't been like a sort of roller coaster of momentum and good times, but it also seems to have gone by very, very quickly. By the time the players come back, it will be April. Our game against Fulham takes place on April 1st. Just leaving a little bit of a gap there if you wanted to insert your own April Fool's joke. I didn't really have anything to hand. But look, I want to make it all interactive and sort of like a colouring book for your ears, kind of, but don't go outside the lines. That's all I'm saying. Does that make any sense? It doesn't. But what I was trying to say is that April 1st we play Fulham, and the league is over on the 25th of May, just sort of 8 weeks. And if you think the season has flown by, I'm telling you, those 8 weeks will absolutely fly by. There's a lot going on. There's at least 2 Champions League games, and we do have some games to ensure that we finish as high as possible up the table. Hopefully more Champions League games as well. You never know. You never know. I'm not saying that they're definite, but they're possible. So let's see what happens, and then we'll get to the summer, and Jesus, we go again. It all comes around again. So basically, what I'm saying is life goes by very fast. Make the most of it. Be nice. Be kind. Look after each other. Speaking of which, I will give you details in the next week or so about what we normally do in April. Our good friends at the Arsenal Vision podcast will be running their fundraiser for the Arsenal Foundation, and what we do at Arseblog is support that as well as supporting other good causes. We have some ideas about how to do that a little bit differently this year, but I will give you details as and when we sort of head into April. So stay tuned for that. Speaking of the Arsenal Vision podcast, my guest today for a statements style podcast is somebody who you will hear on the Arsenal Vision podcast and more. I don't know what the more is, though. It's Elliot Smith. Hello, Elliot.
There's so much more that I do.
But we can't tell anyone. We can't tell anyone.
Can't tell you.
You can't tell.
I can tell you, but then I'd have to find you and do all kinds of nasty stuff. Yeah,
with your particular set of skills. Anyway, look, you know the drill. You know the format of this particular podcast, where we will put, or I will put, there's only me here, statements to you that you have to either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with. So I'm going to make this
I'm a man of tepid opinion, Andrew, but I'll do my best.
Yes, I know you will. This is why I always like to have you on this particular episode. I'll give you a nice, easy one to start with. We got these from our lovely Discord members, who are our Patreon members. And Bittersweet Tim, he says, Arsenal must renew both starting centre-back contracts this summer, even if they would ask for forwards' salaries.
That is a bittersweet question from Tim. I strongly agree, though. Well, both. He said both center backs. I'll agree. It's a strong agree on Gabby. I mean, especially with the noises coming out of Al Nassr now, and the idea that he may have his head turned. We know 2 summers ago his head was turned by the Saudi money. I think he would stay if we give him money that's commensurate with his quality and his importance to the team. And to me, the idea of losing Gabby, no matter what fee you get, just sends you in the market spending most of that fee to try to replace him on someone who likely won't wind up being as good. We have wages coming off the books this summer that give us some room, and we have another year of Champions League money that'll start to hit the sort of 3-year calculation for PSR and UEFA cost controls. So I don't see much of a problem. I think we're in the mid-50s for wage to turnover ratio, which is very healthy. We've got the room to do it. I think we need to do it. Saliba's already on his improved contract, though. So that raises the question of, do we raise him even again? Who knows if any of this social media nonsense about him getting interest from Real Madrid is true or not. He's been saying he wants to win things with Arsenal. I'm inclined to believe him. He could stay at Arsenal another few seasons and still go to a place like Madrid in his prime. So I agree, because I think we have to do Gabby. I don't think it's time to do Saliba yet, though, unless I'm missing something.
Well, yeah, I would strongly agree that if possible, we should do it for both of them because they both have a contract till 2027. So they're both 2 years out. I think the thing with Gabriel is, right, he was one of the first when we did that round of renewals. He was basically one of the first to commit, him, maybe Martinelli. Then we got towards Saka, Odegaard, Saliba, who followed. And I'm not saying Arsenal lowballed him. I don't know if that's the case. But my sense is that with Saka getting a big improved deal, with players arriving at the club, someone like Kai Havertz who is on really big money, that maybe Gabriel's pay packet isn't commensurate with his influence and importance to the team. So I think that is something that we should probably try and correct, if at all possible. I know the Saudi thing is sort of in the air again. I do wonder if it was more about the agent being a little too in contact at that point rather than Gabriel having his head turned per se. That is certainly an agent that people know and love if they want to go look him up. So that's something. But, you know, I think if at all possible, I would strongly agree with the contention that we should do it this summer. But I don't think it leaves us in a terrible position if, for example, we did Gabriel this summer and Saliba next summer. Of course, you run that risk of being a year out when a player of his quality is he's going to attract interest. I mean, do you roll that dice with someone like Saliba? If Arsenal, let's say, have another indifferent season next season, do you run the risk of that Real Madrid interest not materializing next summer, but if you just hang on, play another 12 months at Arsenal, you can join Real Madrid for free, whereas next summer perhaps, or this summer rather, you go into the market, you tie down Gabriel, you tie down Saka, you bring in some quality players in the transfer market, fingers crossed, old Andrea Berta got his work to do, and then it becomes maybe a little easier to convince someone like William Saliba, come on, put your name down there for another 4 years and we'll see where we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger risk versus your hypothesis there is that we win the treble next season and then he just feels like it's job done and he can move on. I don't think an indifferent season is the right framing. But no, look, it's always dangerous when you get to a last year. I have to admit, I don't know what the contract looks like too. Is there a +1? Is there an option that we can trigger or something like that?
There isn't.
Okay, so then yeah, I mean, you definitely run the risk. And we know that Real Madrid's MO is to get players to run down their agreement and get them cheap. Look at what they're doing with Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it's definitely a risk, and he's an asset you don't want to lose for free. So maybe this summer is the time to do it. But he is on that improved deal. And I think whatever deal you put in front of him, Gabriel very rightly is going to say, that's the deal I want too. So I think you maybe do yourself a favor to not be negotiating with both of them at the same time and to roll the dice on Saliba and get Gabby done this summer. By the way, I have to say it's tripping me out because not giving Dublin vibes at all. You are bathed in sunlight right now.
Yeah, it's weird. The sun, the late spring sun is coming through the window here, and I've tried to put my blinds down. Yes, it is well known for its sunshine. I'm sorry, my camera is a bit... It's
like we're watching a Michael Bay film. It's all lens flares. Yeah.
It'll pass over soon, don't worry.
All good.
Yeah, it'll go down in time. And this is only an issue for you. Nobody listening to this has any idea what's happening.
I do
here.
feel like I am the star of my own show, though.
Yes, the Truman...
To me, it's important.
The Truman Show.
Truman
Your
Show.
very own Truman Show. Yes, of course. All right, let's go with this one. Seeing as we're talking defenders, and we're in that ballpark, Freddie LJ says, a back four of White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Timber is our best option against Real Madrid.
I will strongly disagree. And the reason for me is simple. I think you need your best 1v1 defender on Vinny Jr., and I think that's Timber. And with all the best will in the world to Ben White, he hasn't played a lot. He's still coming back from knee surgery. I don't think he will get enough minutes in his legs to be at his absolute sharpest. It is no disrespect to Ben White, who I think might still be the better player in the final third, attacking, than in the defensive third, and certainly has a great relationship that he struck up with Odegaard and Saka. But I think Timber has shown that he is a specialist 1v1 defender, and the threat from Vinny Jr. is the one that we'll be most focused on. Not that Rodrigo can't hurt you, but I think Miles Lewis-Skelly is certainly capable of handling it. If I have to prioritize one or the other, though, I don't want Vinny attacking Ben White. So I would stick with Timber and probably use Miles Lewis-Skelly on the left.
I completely agree with your contention there. Yeah, I think Timber and Vinicius Jr. is one of the most interesting battles of this particular fixture, or these two fixtures, and I think Timber with the match fitness, the sharpness, to go up against Vinicius Jr. is going to be a challenge anyway. I think as we saw the other week with Ben White, when he played against PSV, there's a big difference. I think everybody knows there's a big difference between being fit enough to start a game of football and play 70, 80 minutes of a game of football and being properly match fit, which I think is something Ben White lacks at this moment in time. It is going to be very difficult for our fullbacks. It's going to be difficult for our centre halves as well when you look at the quality that Real Madrid have. But I think you really do have to lean into the guys who've been doing it all season. Maybe it's a 70-20 job, 70-minute, 20-minute job for our fullbacks in these games with, Calafiori, somebody who could come in for Lewis-Skelly if Lewis-Skelly starts, and certainly White could come in for Timber in the last 20 if that's the way we want to play it. I'm interested to see how Mikel Arteta will use the Everton and the Fulham games, or Fulham and Everton, I should say. That's the sequence of them when we come back, as a way of getting the players he ideally wants for those Real Madrid games up to speed as much as possible, because I think Calafiori could probably do with some minutes. He hasn't played a huge amount of late. I don't think he's going to be off the pace unless somebody's running directly at him, in which case that is a little bit of a weakness in his game right now. But certainly Ben White, could do with more minutes, more minutes, and if you get them into him in those games without compromising yourself too much in terms of what you can produce in those fixtures, it would be a handy way of ensuring you've got like a 14, 15, 16-man squad to go into games against Real Madrid rather than sort of 12 or 13.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big benefits of beating Chelsea is I think we are now in a position where we can look at the Fulham and Everton games as sort of a taxi way to the Real Madrid game, really thinking about who's going to play in what positions and how do I want to divvy up the minutes and how do I want people to be fresh for Real Madrid, because I think we are safely ensconced in second place right now. And, if not second, I would certainly say well clear of the worry of being pulled into a Champions League qualification battle. Whereas had we lost to Chelsea, suddenly you really are in the mix of having to keep an eye on dropping below fifth place, as crazy as that is to contemplate. So I think that's a big benefit, is that we can use those two games to position ourselves for the Madrid tie.
What about this one from Fletch? I think I know what your answer is going to be, but he says his statement is Saka will start the first leg of the Madrid tie.
Well, the first thing I want to ask Fletch is when we come out to watch the next game, can we put our drinks on the Underhill account? First thing I want to ask him. Saka will start the first leg of the Madrid tie?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah, that's old heads are going to pick up on that joke, by the way.
Yes.
I'm aging myself there.
It is a very niche movie reference. Great movie. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. I'll say I strongly agree. I think he's going to start against Real Madrid. He's on the grass. He's training. There's still plenty of time. I think, I've heard some rumors could he make the bench for the Fulham game? I think if he can get any minutes against Fulham and Everton, I think he starts against Real Madrid. I think as long as they're not worried about a setback medically, if the only worry is does he have match sharpness, I think he's the level of player you don't worry about match sharpness. He is a match winner. He is a tie winner. And Ethan is a player who really does struggle to play 90 minutes, just from cramping and fatigue. He's 17 years old, for goodness sake, or about to be 18. I could see Saka giving you an hour and Ethan Nwaneri giving you 30 minutes. But yeah, I'm going to strongly agree. I think he's going to make it.
Wow, strongly agree. I'm going to disagree. I won't strongly disagree because I do think there is something to what you're saying. If there are minutes for him in the games against Fulham and Everton, then I think he'll be included. But I would disagree because I just don't think you can run the risk, even with all the medical information that they have. I think this is a game of huge intensity. It's at home first, right? So you have that little bit of a cushion. You have that little bit of a an ability to not, I'm not going to say not pick your best team, but pick the best team you can in the context of the players that you have available to you. I think I would rather see, if Saka is involved, 25, 20 minutes at the end of that game rather than running the risk of him from the start. I think we've got to be really cautious with Bukayo Saka when he comes back, doesn't
it sort of depend where he is in his recovery, though? Because if he is now fully, in full training.
Is he, though?
I don't know.
So I don't know if he is. I mean, he could well be. They're going to keep that as quiet as possible, I think. We probably won't see too many training pictures over the course of the interlull. I don't think, from what Arteta said, he's far away from being involved in full training again. But I think if you let's look at Ben White, okay? And let's look at his involvement since he made his comeback. I'm just going to get those stats up here. Stats by current season. So he returned. When did he return? He was on the bench for the Leicester game, which was on 15th of February. We're now the 19th of March. And, he played 79 minutes on the 12th of March against PSV. That was his first start. Apart from that, he's had 13 minutes in the first game against PSV, 4 minutes against West Ham, and 5 minutes against Nottingham Forest.
The only thing I would say, though, is there is an incumbent in his position currently who is playing phenomenally well. And with all the best will in the world to Ben White, he kind of has to win his place back at this point.
No, I get that, but what we're talking about maybe is managing the minutes in a way which doesn't run the risk of aggravating an injury for a player or aggravating a risk of his comeback.
Sure, of course, but this gets back to my point, right? If he's in full training and capable to be named in the team, then I don't think recurrence of injury is the issue. The question is just how much energy he has in his legs. But if once you're in full training and you're fit enough to be named in the squad, I don't know that the recurrence of injury, because if you really think about it, when he first had this injury, if you remember, there were people that were talking about sort of early March, the first knockout round of the Champions League could be when he's back. That always felt too soon to me. For me, April always felt more realistic. Second week of April is, what is that? Is that 5 months? December to January, February to March, to April. 4 months? When was he injured? December?
Yeah, I think he had the surgery on the end of December. I think it was after Christmas, or maybe it was Christmas Eve, or it was one of those days anyway.
Yeah, so 16-ish weeks. I don't know. I look, you could absolutely be right. The last thing I want to do is say that we should jeopardize his health if that's in jeopardy. But I think there's fitness in terms of you are medically cleared to play, you are not at risk. And then there's fitness as in you have the energy to play in a game of that intensity for the whole game. As long as he is medically cleared to play, I'd start him in the first leg and give him an hour and let Nwaneri have the last half hour of the game.
Right. I still disagree. I'm anxious for him to be back, and I'm really keen to see him back. But I also think managing his reintroduction is going to be very, very important. And I'm not sure that starting him in a game like that is the best way of doing it. But that's just me.
Obviously, if he were to play against Fulham and Everton, that would certainly change things.
I mean, we just can't bring him back and start throwing him into 90 minutes in every game.
What's the worst thing that could happen?
What indeed is the worst thing that could happen?
Because that's what will happen. Yes. So I'd just like to know what it is.
Well, that hamstring he had, surgically reattached.
Yeah.
He'd leave it somewhere on the halfway line as he's running up towards the penalty box.
Look, all I know is one way or another we're going to be starting Jakub Kiwior in both of these legs, probably at right wing. So just get ready for it.
Hey, listen, gives us another
Kiwior, Tierney, Merino front three. Bring it on.
All right. Well, look, we have a question about Merino. Zach Tays says, due to his versatility proven this season, Mikel Merino's first campaign with Arsenal has been a successful transfer for the club.
Strongly disagree. No, I don't buy this one bit. Look, I give him credit for scoring some important goals for us at center forward, and he's clearly working his butt off to try to understand a position that's not his position. He was not bought to play this position. The reason he's playing this position is the club hasn't adequately strengthened in the position in 2 windows when it clearly needed to be done. He was bought to be a midfielder at 28 years old, coming into our league presumably ready to make an impact right away. You don't buy 28-year-old Spanish internationals with the idea that they need a season to integrate. He hasn't been able to make a midfield position his own. Through injury, certainly. He was very unfortunate with that injury, and I think that did play an impact through the performance of other players around him. But for one reason or another, that's not a position he's played much in or impressed in much. He's scored very important goals, and while I don't take that away from him, I think Merino was the wrong profile to target. I think I would have preferred to see us go for someone who's more of a playmaker and a creative influence in the left 8 position. And if we had gone for that player, maybe that player is playing center forward right now. There is no taking away from Merino the impact he's made with the goals that he's scored. But in terms of what we could have gotten instead of him, the amount we've seen him play in the position he was brought in to play, and where we've left ourselves short from a final third creativity and end product standpoint, I think prioritizing that player, that profile, just has not worked out for me. So for me, no, I'm going to strongly disagree.
Okay. I mean, we could be in a situation now. Now, I'm with you in the sense that I would have liked to have seen a more creative profile of player in that left 8. And I still do, actually. That is something that I feel like might be part of another evolution of this team, is to be a bit more creative and not pin the burden on just one guy. And when that one guy's not there, everyone's looking around going, well, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? You know? I would say that if we had done that, we might be playing somebody even less suited to centre forward right now if the injuries had transpired the way they did. So I'm not saying it was or has been a success, but I think I would just disagree rather than strongly disagree, because I think what he has done in filling the gap in the way that he has over the last few weeks has been, again, I can't say it's successful per se, but I think it has been useful. And,
of course it has.
You know, and it's, you know, it is, as you say, a consequence of us not doing what we needed to do in the last 2 transfer windows, not just January. Which
may in part, though, be because we prioritize him. You see what I'm saying?
No, I get it.
If we don't buy him and we buy someone that's more of a final 30 goal scorey, goal creaty kind of guy, maybe that guy is playing striker currently and is more suited to it. I don't know. I mean, he's scoring the goals, so that's brilliant. But yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, I think what's been interesting maybe about a couple of the recent signings, Havertz is one and Merino is another. You know, I've made this point before about Arteta's preference for what he wants in that left 8 position, from Granit Xhaka to Kai Havertz to Declan Rice to Mikel Merino, you know, line them up usual suspect style. And, you know, they're all pretty similar looking in terms of their big physical dual winners, mostly left-footed, apart from Rice. You know, so this has obviously been Arteta's profile. But, you know, Havertz has made his home up front, if that's the right way of putting it. And Marino's been forced into action up there. Yeah. Yeah, it's not been great. It's not been great. I don't think it's any particular slight on him per se, because I think if you do go, if you want to like really analyze every transfer, you do have to look at all the context. So he played the Euros all the way through, no preseason, gun injury, all that kind of stuff. You know, we can all see that. But
the question isn't, is it his fault?
No.
Right? The question is, has it worked out? And I would say this, I think one thing we do a bad job of sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, we all are, is thinking about things in terms of opportunity cost. So it's like, hey, has Merino been handy the last couple of weeks? Like, sure. But we also have to analyze it through the lens of, had we not bought Merino, what other move might we have prioritized or pulled off? And would that player have been handier to have? We can't answer it because we don't know what it is. I suspect the answer might be yes.
It would have been a left back.
And we don't have a fourth choice left back at the moment.
I think he will certainly be keen to do better, and who knows what he might produce between now and the end of the season that might change, you know, what we've just said. But I think if you're looking at it through the prism of he's been brought in to play as a midfielder in the left A, maybe, sometimes as a double pivot, maybe sometimes, in a slightly deeper position. We haven't really seen that, Has he filled in well? Yes. Has he been a success in terms of, what we wanted from that player in midfield? No. So, but we'll see. He might score a few more and we could be thinking about this very differently.
Look, all I'm saying is you're going to have to scrub this from the internet when he scores the winner against Real Madrid. That's all.
Yeah, in both games. In both games.
Yeah.
And in the final as well when we get there.
Got to get past Villa in the next round first.
PSG.
It's Unai Emery. It's all he does, mate. All he does is get to finals in the Europe.
This is not the Europa League. Raya Deep Mountain Kai says Arsenal will spend more than £15 million on a new backup goalkeeper this summer.
I mean, strongly agree, right? We're going to buy Joan Garcia. So I don't know what else there is to say about that, except that is the backup keeper who may ultimately be the succession plan for David Raya, who's crossing the 30-year mark. So, yeah, strongly agree, right? I mean, this is going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, could well. It certainly seems to be the preference of Iñaki Kanya, whose strike record...
When has he ever steered us wrong?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, this guy's hit rate, I mean, to be fair, he's got it with David Raya, but then, David Raya was a very good Premier League goalkeeper and lots of other teams were after him, if I remember. I think Spurs were trying to sign him, weren't they, one summer? Or maybe the summer.
That's a black mark on his CV, but okay.
Well, yes, but I think they're just sort of desperately looking at anything that might improve their team and their squads. But look, they can't battle the forces of nature itself. I would also strongly agree with this. I'm not quite sure how much Espanyol are going to be looking for now. They didn't seem willing to sell cheap last summer. I think Arsenal were led up the garden path a bit, whether it was by an agent or somebody who maybe told them this guy was available for a bit less. But,
And he's only been better this season, by the way. I mean, he's turning heads, so he's not going to get cheaper.
No, that's true. Does he have a release clause?
That I don't know.
Maybe. Okay. Mia Miller, I think that's what it is. I've got my glasses on, but that font is still too small. Mia Millier. Millier?
I'll take your word for it.
Anyway, they know who they are, and I apologize for getting their name as badly wrong as I did. One thing
I'm hell-bent on is getting pronunciations and names right. You know that. So it does offend me, but that's okay.
Okay, well, look, I'll make a donation to your favorite pronunciation charity after this particular podcast. They say, there is no clear favorite to win the Premier League next season.
Strongly disagree. I think it's us. And I don't think it's close. We were the favorite going into this season.
Were we?
Yeah. The betting odds favorites, yeah. Just slightly above Manchester City. Manchester City have the Club World Cup this summer. Who knows what Rodri's going to be? They've got to replace... we looked at this on the pod the other day. There's like 7 players there over 30.
Yeah.
They've got a huge rebuilding process to do. And Pep, maybe some of the magic is fading a little bit. They've conceded the highest XG per shot of any team in the Premier League this season.
More than Southampton.
The highest XG per shot of anyone. Now, they aren't conceding the most shots, but when you get past them, you get real good chances on them. And we've seen it. They concede goals in bunches. I think the goalkeepers need to be replaced. I think the back line needs to be reworked. I don't know if I buy that Kusanov is going to be the guy. How do you replace Kevin De Bruyne? How do you replace Rodri if he doesn't come back in the quality that he was? They have a lot of work to do. I think Liverpool will lose 2 of their 3 star players this summer, at least. I think Van Dijk might go and Trent will go. Salah, I'm willing to take the bet that maybe we see the decline start to happen. He can't keep pushing the boulder up the hill forever. Maybe they'll take the money on him and sell him to Saudi.
But he's out of contract, isn't he? Isn't Salah out of contract this summer?
I don't think so. He has another year, doesn't he?
I'll look that up in the meantime, yeah.
I know Trent is.
No,
I don't think
out of contract. Okay. According to Transfermarkt anyway, contract expires 2025.
Okay, so there you go. So they wouldn't even get the money, which is more devastating if he doesn't stay. But they're also kind of parsimonious. FSG are not a club that just splashes cash willy-nilly. We don't know what Slot's transfer success rate's going to be yet. So we'll have to see on that. And I think their midfield's been found out a little bit. As this season's gone on, I think you've seen that Gravenberch is not a 6. McAllister and Szoboszlai don't add a lot of heft in there and against teams with good midfields like us or like PSG, they've been overrun. Look, if they keep that group together, there's probably another season of them being very good. But I think that this is the crest of the wave. So I think there's going to be a bit of a rebuild at Liverpool. I think City are in the midst of a bit of a rebuild, and nobody else is any good. But you know who's really good? We are. And I think we're going to realize going into next season that we have probably underrated how impactful injuries have been to this season. For some reason, while we're watching United fall apart with injuries and Spurs fall apart with injuries and City fall apart with injuries, City who have unlimited resources and still can't get their shit together, Chelsea fall apart with injuries, nobody seems to want to give Arsenal the grace to recognize that we've probably suffered the most substantial injuries in the big part of the pitch you can least afford to suffer them and maintain second place, and we're deep into the Champions League. So I think with the benefit of some hindsight and some distance from this season, with our players back and strengthening the attack, which we almost certainly will do after we get the backup goalkeeper and additional left backs, yeah, I think we will be the clear favorite to win the Premier League next season.
Wow. I'm with you 100% on the injuries thing and the way that we have coped. You know, we've had some disappointing results, but to be where we are in this league with the injuries that we've had and with, you know, someone like Bukayo Saka, that for me is just such a huge regret from this season, because I think we would be there with Liverpool if we still had Saka. I think there are other players that maybe we could have coped without. You know, maybe
where would they be if they lost Salah and we didn't lose Saka? Does anyone think it wouldn't be flipped?
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I completely agree. And I know, you know, that's a difficult sell as well, because people will always say, well, you had January to do something about it. You didn't do anything about it. And I completely accept that. And I'm not defending January or the previous summer's transfer window in any way. I can't do that, and I won't do that. But I do think in the context of you know, who we've had out and what we've had available to us to be second, and, you know, I'm not saying comfortably second, but more or less comfortably second, you know, does say a lot about this team's ability to not get beaten, not always win the games, but not get beaten. I think your contention, though, about us being the favourites for the Premier League next season is entirely incumbent on what we do this summer in the transfer market and who we bring in and what kind of quality we invest into our forward line. At which point I'd be willing to revisit it. So can
I stop you for a second and ask you a hypothetical here? Because also, I will say, I think the fact that there's no summer tournament this summer is huge for us as well. By the way, I think Rice came back not all the way fit. Saka came back, obviously struggling. You know, we had Merino got injured and had played all the way to the end of the Euros. Like we had a lot of players that went deep. Saliba went deep. Yeah. Let me ask you this hypothetical. Let's say Salah, Van Dijk, and Trent all leave Liverpool. Okay. And City have to play in the Club World Cup in the summer and have a lot of players to replace. Like, take Arsenal out of the equation. Let's say Arsenal join the Super League this summer, but all the other clubs stay in the Premier League. So we win it by default. Sure. Who is your favorite going into next season if it's not Arsenal? Who is your clear favorite?
That's a very good question.
And again, in my hypothetical, at least Van Dijk and Trent have left Liverpool. But let's say Salah, Van Dijk, and Trent have left Liverpool.
Yeah. Then it's going to be, I suppose, out of the teams that are left. It depends what Liverpool do in investment. City could win £100 million if they win the Club World Cup and reinvest that, you know.
They could also be in League One.
Yeah, that's also
I'm not
true.
kidding.
No, yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Okay, I'll concede your point there that it is on us. It is on us, though, to be those overwhelming favourites. I think, you know, without making those investments in the forward line, we're not. But if we do, then, yeah, why the hell not? It also depends what Liverpool do in the market, what City do in the market. I think City have spent some money in January, which probably will have an impact on their summer to an extent as well, because they spent quite big, didn't they? With
Marmoush and Kusanov and what was his name, the midfielder from Spain that they got? Nicholas... Or was it from Porto?
It was from Portugal, yeah.
Yeah, Porto, I think.
Gonzalez?
Yeah,
Is
Nico
that his
Gonzalez,
name?
right?
Nico Gonzalez?
Yeah, so I don't know. I will say, obviously, look, there is a world where Liverpool keeps Salah and Salah can produce another 60 goal and assist season for them, and that turns everything on its head. I'm going to bet the under on that. I think that is the long tail outcome. I don't see that being most likely. No. The most likely thing to me is Liverpool lose at least 2 of their 3 talismanic players. Salah cannot reproduce this kind of season. City have a big rebuild, and I don't know if they can do it in one window. And then you'd say, who else is left? Do you like Chelsea? Do you like United? Do you think these teams are going to make the move? I think we go into next season as the clear favorite, given that we were a slight favorite this season, and everyone expects us to have a big summer. But if we don't, I'll say this, Andrew, we cannot have another summer where we come out of it going, oh, we just didn't quite do the business, because next season it should be there for us if we get it right.
Yeah, I mean, while we're on this, Matt, brother of light, says there's too much business to realistically get done this summer.
I don't understand. No, I'm going to strongly disagree. Like, I don't understand that perspective because, first of all, we did nothing in January, right? We have more money coming in from the Champions League that'll count towards UEFA and FFP and all that stuff. We're going to offload some big contracts this summer, although we have some other big ones to renew. But if you had 100% fit Arsenal right now, right, 100% fit, what would you say we absolutely have to reinforce? Striker? Central midfield, right? Because we're going to lose Partey and Jorginho. Maybe an attacking midfielder or a wing fielder or something like that. But like, if you get Zubamendi and you get, let's say Isak, but maybe it's Sesko, whatever. I think if you buy one more hybrid attacker, you're fine. Like, it's 3 players. What else do we need? A backup center back, maybe?
No, I mean, I think, if you were to sort of very quickly list all the things that you need to do, right? You're talking about contract renewals, as we've talked about, for Gabriel, for Saliba, for Saka. You want to bring in at least one really good attacking player, maybe 2. I think you're looking at a winger, and I think you're looking at a striker. I don't hold out any hope for Isak, by the way, as much as I would love it. I think it's just too expensive. I don't think Newcastle are going to finish outside the European places, and that probably makes it a little more difficult. I think if Newcastle finish outside of Europe completely, or in the what's the Conference League thing, then I think you can unsettle Isak. If you're prepared to go there,
in the Champions League, so I think
they could be. They easily could be. I mean, there are quite a few teams who are capable of finishing, in the top 4 or top 5, as it might be, with that extra place for English clubs. So if they finish in Europe, if they're in the Europa League, or if they're in the Champions League, just forget about it. There's no chance of that happening. But I think need.
Oh, sorry.
But I mean, I'm talking about then midfield. Okay, do you need to bring in any defenders? You probably don't. We need to sort of trim a couple of defenders from the squad. But you're looking at players like Tierney, we think is going to Celtic. Zinchenko will probably leave. Kivior will probably leave. Do you need to bring in another Tomiyasu, for example? I don't mean a guy who's always injured. I mean a guy who can give you that cover across the back line. Maybe that's something you need to add. We've talked about a goalkeeper, talked about midfield. Vieira, does he need to go? Contracts for Lewis Skelly, contracts for Ethan Nwaneri. I don't think it's too much. I think it's a lot, but I think a club like Arsenal, with the structures that it has, with a new sporting director who's obviously got some authority to come in and manage all of that stuff, which I think is a part of why January went the way it went. We didn't have a sporting director. We didn't have a guy with any authority, to really push for something to happen in that transfer window. That should be the remit now of Andrea Berta. I strongly agree there's a lot to do. I strongly disagree that there's too much business to do, because you have literally months to do it, starting now. Now until the start of the season. And then, of course, the way the market operates as well, it means that you can go until the end of the market, the end of August or whatever that might be as well.
I think the right number of forwards to have is 6. I think that's what you see at the clubs that are well stocked. And if you look at our department there, it's Ethan and Saka off the right, Leo and Martinelli off the left, Kai through the middle. That's 5. You can't count Jesus, because who knows if you even get any minutes out of him next season coming off another knee reconstruction. Let's say you want to move on Leo. So what do you need to be at 6? You need a left winger who can compete with Martinelli and maybe start ahead of Martinelli, and a striker. And then you'd have Martinelli, let's say Nico Williams, Sesko, Kai, Saka, Nwaneri. All right, that works for me. So that's a wide forward and a striker. In midfield, you've got Odegaard, Rice, let's say Zubamendi, let's say Miles Lewis-Skelly. Right? I know we are trying to talk Jorginho into staying, but I don't think we are. I don't think we are. Maybe we aren't. That could be light if Partey and Jorginho go. The back line, we know the numbers. So I think you could get away with striker, winger, midfielder. My idea would be striker, winger, midfielder, and then another maybe slightly more advanced midfielder.
Because you forgot Merino.
Oh, and I forgot Merino. So you got Merino, Rice, Odegaard, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and Zubamendi. I don't know. Andrew, it's not more business than our club can do. There's no tournament this summer. I think if you think it's too much business that our club could do, then I think you have rightful doubts about the club being able to operate in the market. This is a normal amount of business for a club our size to need to do in a summer, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the midfield thing is very interesting. And how do you change that profile? You mentioned Lewis-Skelly potentially as a midfielder. Cloak Dagger says Miles Lewis-Skelly should be our left 8 next season.
Disagree. But not that he shouldn't be an option at left 8 next season. The idea that he should be our left 8, I would like one of two things. I'd either like us to buy a left 8 that's a proper left 8, or I'd be fine with Rice just continuing there if Zubamendi is going to be the 6. I don't think we're at a point where we're going to say Miles Lewis-Skelly is going to start ahead of Declan Rice, that's for sure. And if you bought Zubamendi, I have a hard time believing he's not going to start. We just did a scouting video for him today, and he's a really interesting player. We also did a scouting video of Adam Morton, and holy cow, he's a superstar. So what I would say, Andrew, is I disagree, not because I don't think he should be used there, but because I don't think it should be his position to start the season. And he may start the season as our first choice left back.
Well, that's it. I was going to say to you, if we've put all this groundwork into Lewis-Skelly being a left back and repurposing him from the midfield position that he played in all the way through the youth teams, does it make sense to change his position again? So you have another season of adaptation rather than a season of, let's say, consolidation and progress for Lewis-Skelly at left back. So I would disagree with that contention. I think he is probably capable of playing there, but I don't think he should be our left 8 next season.
I would say this, right? I guess I'm strongly disagreeing because I can't see a world where he's the left 8 next season if we buy Zubamendi, but this could be a strongly agree if you're prepared to move Rice to 6 and you think you could play a Rice, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and Odegaard midfield. I think that's a fun, interesting, exciting midfield with the right combination of traits. I just don't think there's any world where that's what we're planning. So
I don't either, but I really would like to see something more like that,
Yeah, me too.
Odegaard, Nwaneri. Odegaard, Saka.
Eberechi Eze.
Maybe Eberechi Eze.
Cunha.
Yeah.
Don't like the attitude?
Not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure about Cunha as a left 8. I think he's a decent player and he's sort of like a shadow striker for me more than a left 8, I've always had a feeling about Bukayo Saka playing a bit more centrally. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. And some people might think I'm mad because he's just so brilliant out on the right-hand side. Why would you change that? And I completely get that. But it's
makes
just
a good emergency
feeling.
Left back as well.
Yeah, he's got some history there. That's all I will say. Simon King says Arteta needs 2 or 3 new coaches to give him a fresh perspective.
Disagree. Does he need a fresh perspective? I don't know. I mean, are we not playing well? Are we not doing well? Did we not do well last season? I do know that Ferguson, for example, was really good about refreshing his assistants and getting different viewpoints and ideas in there. No, I'll agree. I'll mildly agree. I think it is always good to get new voices in your ear that can bring tactical innovations or different perspectives. If you trust them and you're willing to take that on board, I think it's always a positive. I think Mikel Arteta is very, very good at what he's doing as a coach. Whatever you want to say as a manager, as a coach, I think he's absolutely brilliant. But if there's someone who could come into that group who maybe has a slight different idea about playing through the block a little more than around the block, or different idea about where we can take some risks in central areas, or how we can generate a little more threat in the counter, or maybe, hey, what if we leave Saka up the pitch a little bit more from time to time? Like, there's ideas that we can crib from other clubs. I think, imitation is the fondest form of flattery. I think managers steal ideas from each other all the time. That's just football. Or as Clive would say, it's just football, mate. So I think I'll slightly agree. I think it's never a bad idea to freshen up the people around you to make sure that you're not missing something that a fresh set of eyes could see. So sure.
Yeah. The only thing I disagree with is the 2 to 3 new coaches.
Well, 2 to 3. Yeah. Okay.
I think we could add somebody to the coaching staff and it make a bit of a difference. I think, we should, in as much as possible, like you say, try and keep things fresh, keep fresh ideas. That's why you refresh your squad. New faces bring new ideas. And if Mikel Arteta can find somebody that, can work with this group and bring something to the table, a bit like the set piece coach has, maybe it's a specialist coach of some description. I don't quite know who that might be or what they might specialize in, but I think you've always got to be open to the idea of renewal within an organization at every level, whether that's playing staff, coaching staff, and maybe even executive staff.
How about a referee management coach? Someone who helps our players get the referee to like them more. What's that worth this season?
To Arsenal, that's worth about 15 points a season.
Title's ours.
There you go. Frankie Di Laurento says Gabriel Martinelli has peaked and we should consider offers for him.
I'll agree. Yeah, I was as high on Gabriel Martinelli as they come. I still think he's a good player. And I think one of the things that's really been ruined about football discourse by social media is everything's binary. So someone is the GOAT or the shit. And that's all. They're one of those two things. What if Gabriel Martinelli is just a really good, high-level, wide player who maybe isn't quite a star winger for a big club competing for the biggest things? Do I think Martinelli could be a very, very, very important squad player if we got a better left winger in? Absolutely. I thought he played great the other day, by the way. I thought he was good. I don't think he's as good off the right, but I thought he was very good against Chelsea. I think he's coming back into some form this season. But we've seen certain things. His shot numbers are cratering. His dribble success is cratering. I think his ball striking has maybe gone downhill a little bit. He slashes at the ball more. He used to be, I think, a more confident striker of the ball. You saw that with that wild slash he had against Chelsea the other day. I just think Gabriel Martinelli is a great example of a player we got relatively inexpensively, very inexpensively, who's turned out to be far beyond anything we ever hoped he could be for that price, but maybe is falling short of the superstar that we thought was breaking through. And so then the question becomes, is he a value to us as a really important squad player? He seems very happy at Arsenal. He's on a very good wage, obviously, and can play across the front three. Or is there more value cashing in on him if there's a big offer? So for me, Andrew, I know I'm not allowed to agree and disagree. I would agree that we may be seeing his actual level now. I don't know that we have to sell him, but I think we have to buy someone that maybe is who can eclipse him as the starter. That's where I would be with Martinelli. I think he is a very valuable squad player. I think over the course of a season, he's the only one really in this squad that has serious pace, and I don't even think in the pantheon of really, really quick players in the Premier League, he's one of the top. I think he's. Do you think he's lost a step? Does he look like he's a little step slower? Maybe. I think the thing for me about Martinelli is his head is down a bit too often. That's the thing that, whatever age he is now, 23, 24, I would be expecting a bit less of. The ball at his feet, the head is down, and it doesn't allow you to pull off the kind of moves you would expect a really top-class winger to be able to pull off. I want to sit here, by the way, eating a big slice of humble pie with egg all over my face when he tears Real Madrid apart over 2 legs. He has the talent to do it. But I think even with a couple of injuries, it's been too long since we saw his very, 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 very best level for me to feel like, okay, all we need to do is give him a nice summer holiday and he'll come back and be what he was 2 years ago. But I still think he has a place in this squad. So it's about, supplementing and augmenting the squad properly in that sense. So I will say this too. It is kind of interesting an exercise to go through. I went to Vegas for a meetup with some of our patrons, and we had a really nice time. We were talking about Gabriel Martinelli, as you do. And it was sort of like, well, name all the left wingers who are better than him in football. And you start to get into a really interesting conversation where that list doesn't get very long. It's 8, 10 players you list, and then you start going, really? No, that guy? No, maybe not that guy. No, I don't think that. Like who does Liverpool have playing out there? Luis Diaz? Is he better? Is he definitely better than Martinelli?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a perception thing with...
Is Doku really? I mean, Doku's a good dribbler, but is Doku better than Martinelli? No. Is Jadon Sancho? No. A guy we all thought we wanted from Wolves, what's his name? Chelsea guy.
Pedro Neto.
Pedro Neto, not had a good season, not been good. They're not happy with him there. I like Semenyo. Nico Williams is interesting, but I think he's got fewer goals than Martinelli does this season.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
And he's on a huge wage as well. So it's just one of those weird things where maybe it's one of those things where you undervalue your own player because you start to look at left wingers and his underlying metrics and what he's producing and the work he does defensively, he's still up there. Do I think we can do better off the left? I do, but it's not a position that's just got an overabundance of quality.
Sure. All right, let's do a couple to finish us off. I miss Xhaka. I don't know if that's an Apple version of a Lady Xhaka robot or somebody who's giving their true feelings away. He says, or they say, a stadium expansion is a bad thing for Arsenal, match day atmosphere, and football in general.
I strongly disagree, I guess. The problem is I wish that the Xhaka this person who appreciates Xhaka, I mean, is it because they're worried that a bigger crowd would be more booze for Xhaka if he took the armband off and threw it on the ground? Is that what he's worried about?
Maybe so.
No, I don't know. I guess what I would say, Andrew, is just like, I don't know what the hypothesis is there, because what I think is there's clearly more demand for tickets right now than there is supply. That leads to a really nasty situation on third-party sites and touting and stuff like that. The club are between a rock and a hard place. Maybe if they did expand, they could freeze ticket price hikes because you're getting more revenue without extracting it from each individual, right? You can have more tickets sold at a more reasonable price. More people get to see the Arsenal. And from a stadium atmosphere standpoint, I don't know, I feel like 80,000 people make more noise than 60,000 people. I don't know. And if it's more steepled, if it feels a little bit more modern in the way it's designed, maybe it can contain the sound better. I'm sure there's a good argument for it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know why it would be bad for Arsenal as long as we keep our level. It might be bad, in 3-4 years' time if we slip down again, and then you've got a lot more empty seats than you would have normally. But my thing is, I don't really understand how they're going to do it, how it's possible. I know they've sort of explored the idea of doing, or what happened at SoFi, for example, where they dug down. I just don't think that's possible.
Andrew, AI and the blockchain solve this. AI and the blockchain. Just that's all you have to say. That's
AI and the blockchain.
Yeah.
But expand on that for me.
That's all you need to know. AI and the blockchain. They solve this. Okay. Technology will solve it.
Technology will solve. Yeah. Okay.
Just get someone from Silicon Valley on it. They'll solve it.
Yes, they will. And all of a sudden, oh no, I'm not even going to go there.
They can reinvent the bus or something.
Yeah, exactly. What if we got these buildings? Right? No, hold on. We get these buildings.
Stops.
We get these buildings and we fill them with books, and we let people come in and they can hire the book. Or we could just give them the book. They can become what about? Fucking cunts. A lot of it. Okay, final one. This comes from Andrew, who is at Arseblog or something. So this is my one to you.
Oh, I'm going to strongly disagree.
You might. Arsenal's season has been disappointing, but could still be historic.
Strongly disagree. It has been disappointing and cannot be historic because we're not winning the Champions League. I'm sorry to break that news to you.
It could be.
All right, fine. Strongly agree. It has been disappointing and it could be historic. Yeah, look, whether you are more forgiving of why it's been disappointing or less forgiving, it's been disappointing. right? Like, so even if I maybe have a little more patience for the excuses or
reasons,
for the word explanations,
reasons,
yeah, reasons don't have to be excuses. I can see both sides of this. I'm actually pretty good at keeping these two ideas in my head, that the club did not do the business it needed to do in the summer and January, and that has been a contributory factor to our failure to achieve our goals so far this season. But I can also hold the idea in my head that even if we had done the business we needed to, if you lose Odegaard and he comes back not looking like himself, and you lose Saka and you lose Merino and you lose Jesus and you lose Kai Havertz and you lose Martinelli, I don't know that any transfer business would have rescued that enough where we get to the 90 or 91 points you're going to need to get past Liverpool. And then when you factor in the silly red cards this season, no, I think there are things this club should have done better the last two transfer windows. And even had we done them, I still sort of suspect with the injuries we got, the season winds up this way. Now, some people might say, by the way, we wouldn't have gotten some of these injuries if we had those signings right, because we would have played players different. Sure. I can't answer that. Whether or not it can be historic, my feeling is, as much as I want to say we can still win the Champions League, because we can, of course, we're still in it. If we are playing a front line of Saka, Martinelli, and Mikel Merino, home and away against Real Madrid, home and away against, I'll give it to you this time, PSG, and against Barcelona, let's say, I just feel like we saw what happened with Bayern Munich. We were their match in a lot of ways, but we lacked the firepower to turn the tie in our favor. And if we lacked the firepower last season to turn the tie in our favor, then we sure as hell do this time. So I want to be realistic, because what I don't want to do is be like, we can still win it. And then Mikel Merino's playing striker and you're going, why did I think we could win it?
What am I, stupid?
Yeah, I mean, strongly agree. Of course, it has been disappointment. It could be historic, but I'm going to throw a little cold water on that. But I'll tell you this much. I would love to be talking to you very, very drunk at the end of May about this particular clip of audio and how wrong I was.
Sure. Well, listen, here's a commitment from both of us. If that does transpire, we'll do a drunk podcast to celebrate. How about that?
I mean, if we don't, I will be very mad about it. Yep.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll be a podcast, but we'll be drunk. We'll be talking to each other, whether there are microphones or cameras or we're just face down in a gutter.
It's probably better that there wouldn't be microphones, actually.
The more I think about that, the more I think you're right. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sure people will get over their disappointment of missing out on such an aural feast if they were watching Arsenal winning the Champions League.
This is going to be a historic podcast, though, because I have slandered Mikel Merino and our chances of winning the Champions League. And when Merino scores the Champions League winning goal in the final in Berlin, this episode is going to have been the jinx that did it. So you're welcome.
All right. Well, listen, I'm very grateful to you for that. I appreciate your time as always. Elliot, thanks for being with us.
Andrew, it is always my pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much indeed to Elliot, having already blocked him on Twitter, which I'm sure most of you have at this point. You can now go and block him on Blue Sky as well. He is at ArsenalVisionPodcast.com on Blue Sky. That is at ArsenalVisionPodcast.com, which is where, of course, you will find all the info and all the episodes that you need from the, hang on, let me just check, Arsenal Vision Podcast. So there you go. Right, as it is the interlull, of course, there is no Arsenal men's football, but Arsenal women are in action this weekend playing Liverpool at the Emirates. I'm actually going over for that game, so that should be a bit of fun. Get an Arsenal fix, and hopefully the Arsenal women can bounce back from the midweek disappointment of the 2-0 defeat to Real Madrid. A result they, of course, will be keen to overturn next week because the second leg takes place at the Emirates. The good thing, I suppose, is that the game against Liverpool and the game against Real Madrid, those games will take place on an actual football pitch and not something that looks like no man's land. That bombed out space between the trenches in World War I, that was an absolute disgrace of a pitch. Obviously, it was the same for both teams. It doesn't mean that the pitch was acceptable, though, and Arsenal will, of course, have to do better, cut out the individual mistakes, and hopefully score the goals that can get us through to the semi-final of the Champions League. So you never know, I might run into one or two of you around the game and around the Emirates on Saturday evening. You can join myself and James on Monday. We will have an interlull Interlull Arsecast Extra, and next week as well, we will have an episode of Waffle for You, which is the podcast in which James and I talk about anything and everything. We answer questions put to us by our Patreon members about anything and everything apart from Arsenal. So that will be available next week too. If you'd like to sign up for our Patreon, support everything that we do on Arseblog, you can do it at patreon.com/Arseblog. Amazing. Right, I'll leave it there for now. Hopefully the interlull doesn't vex you too much. A little bit of downtime, a little bit of recharging the batteries might help before we get back to action. So until Monday, take it easy, folks, and we will catch you on the next one. Right now, all over England, there are young people who are suffering. Week after week, there is no respite. The pain and the hunger is never ending. Their school days and their home lives are miserable. Now this is where you expect us to ask for your help and your hard-earned cash in the shape of a donation. But these are Spurs and Man United fans, so fuck them, the little twats.